So what we're doing today then is starting on Chapter 5, CVP analysis. CVP analysis stands for cost, volume, profit analysis, and that's the name of the chapter. And basically, we've been focusing on contribution margin, and that is going to be the tool that we use, or the base number that we use to conduct this analysis. And it's going to help us make decisions on products and product lines and pricing and volume that we should be selling to attain different goals, i.e. breaking even or target profits. And so the idea of contribution margin or of CVP analysis is based on a series of assumptions. Clearly, you need to know these assumptions. And we have to be working within those parameters. Jessica, sorry, can you? And what are those? In order to analyze our products and our product lines, we have to start from some basis. And that's what these are. Number one, selling price is constant. Well, we know that's not true. Of course, our selling price is going to shift. But when we're making this analysis, we're assuming, for the purposes of any concrete analysis we're doing, that the selling price is constant. We have to assume, and we talked about this in Chapter 2 ad nauseum, that costs are linear, and they can each be described as fixed or variable. And obviously, if they're mixed, you have to do what? You got to break them into the two components, right? So we assume that you can do that with every cost. How do variable costs behave again? They remain constant per unit. They remain constant per unit and change in total based on number produced. And we know that. Variable costs, they remain the same per unit, and they change in total based on number of units produced. Fixed costs remain the same in total. Fixed costs remain the same in total. And do we really break fixed costs into a per unit basis? Not really. And the mixed costs, we can break into both. Okay. Another assumption is that in a multi-product company, in other words, I sell more than one product line, which is going to describe, pretty much everybody, that my sales mix remains constant. What the heck is a sales mix? Exactly. How many, if I manufacture Fulf discs, I sell 3 drivers to 2 putters to 1 mid-range disc, right? That's my mix, 3 to 2 to 1. That's my ratio or my mix. And you have to have some assumption before you can conduct this analysis that that's remaining stable. Again, not necessarily true, but we have to start from some basis. And these are our rules. And then, and again, this is a leap, but these are assumptions. The manufacturing company's inventories do not change, i.e. what I produce is what I sell. Well, again, obviously, probably not true unless you're in what kind of system?
Special orders.
Yeah, special order, which is basically, we call that JIT, just in time. In other words, I don't produce something till I have a purchase order pulling it through, right, just in time. So it's not like the old-fashioned method where you produce a bunch of inventory and then hope you get a sale. You only produce once you have a purchase order. Somebody said, I need 1,500 drivers. Okay, what's the basics? The basics are that we're looking at our contribution margin income statement. Is there anything new here? I guess in this case I'm selling bicycles, racing bicycles. Minus all my variable expenses, give me my contribution margin, minus my fixed expenses, give me net operating income. Anything new here? What kinds of things go in that variable expenses category there. Kinds of expenses. Okay, that's all gonna be encapsulated into my cost of goods sold, right? And a lot of you forgot to put cost of goods sold on your contribution margin income statement. Yeah, what kind of an account is cost of goods sold? It's not a contra, it's a variable expense. Now, can there be parts of cost of goods sold that are fixed? Like what? Direct materials are always variable. Direct labors, always variable. Manufacturing overheads, what? Both. Both. Some variable, some fixed, right? Variable, indirect labor. Mixed, probably my utility bill. I've got a fixed cost for my sewer line and then a per whatever cubic foot of solid waste charge. And then something like my depreciation fixed, right? So overhead can go all three places. It's mixed, it's split into variable, fixed. So might I see a piece of cost of goods sold down in fixed? Sure. The fixed component of my overhead. What else is up in my variable expenses besides my variable cost of goods sold number? Shipping, any variable admin, variable shipping, variable commission, marketing, anything like that. Okay. So why is this so important, this number contribution margin again? Why do I care so much about that?
How much you sell that contributes, that profit contributes to your expense.
Yeah, it's how much do I have left to cover these guys, which don't go away no matter how much or how little I sell. And after I cover them, hopefully I've got some net operating income. And it says it right down here. CM is the amount remaining from after sales revenue and variable expenses have been deducted. Well, what's the purpose of that number? It's got to cover my fixed expenses and my net operating income. Okay. You can see here that we can run contribution margin both total and per unit, can't we? And we need to get proficient with that. There's no reason that we can't just put these two columns next to each other. And here we've got 500 bikes, right? So if I take 250,000 divided by 500 bikes, I've got the per unit sales price. And same with variable expenses, and same with CM.
So it's kind of like on the example we had in chapter 2,
Yes.
where it had us do the per unit.
Yes. And you should be able to be, conversant enough to go back and forth between those. If I give you these numbers, I got to tell you how many bikes you can multiply and go over there, can't you? If we start with total and I tell you how many bikes you divide and move over to per unit. If you were talking to your board of directors, what would you tell them that $200 represents? It's not gross profit because I've got my selling and my admin and my marketing variable expenses in there. And gross profit is just simply sales minus cost. What realistically is it?
How much can be a pipe?
Go ahead. Yeah, each bike I sold can generate what? Another $200 to cover my fixed expenses and my profit. Okay, let's back up here. So each month, they've got to cover 80 grand in fixed costs. And each bike gives them $200 of contribution margin. Can you even do this like in your head and tell me how many bikes they have to sell to break even? 400. So let's go do our first calculation. Because you can't talk about being profitable till you talk about breaking even. Right? break even in units. How do I figure out if in a single product firm, I sell one kind of racing bike? Of course, that's not realistic right there. But how many products, units do I have to sell to break even? Can anybody give me the formula based on what we just looked at?
Take your fixed expenses. Divide that.
Per unit what? Break even in units, i.e. how many bikes do I have to sell in this case, equals fixed cost divided by contribution margin per unit. Based on what we just looked at, what were my fixed costs? Everybody see that on the PowerPoint? My fixed cost equal $80,000. Now, realistically, am I going to hand you this number or are you going to have to calculate it? I probably actually have to give you the fixed cost. I'm sorry, that I've got to give you. What you're going to have to calculate is this guy. So help me out, Hannah. How do I get contribution margin per unit? What minus what? Minus variable. And let's call them costs. And I'm not going to go into the difference between a cost and an expense, but from an accounting standpoint, there is a bit of a difference. So we're identifying these as costs. What is CM per unit? Sales price minus variable costs. Right? How much was my contribution margin for one bike? $200. How many bikes do I need to sell? Now you're talking to your board. I say, boy, my contribution margin is $200 per bike. And they're like, oh, great. What does that mean? It means that before we can even start generating a profit, we have to sell how many bikes? 400. Then they say, well, our target this month is $100,000. How do I change this formula? To figure out how many bikes I have to sell to make 100,000. Just think about it for a second. So my question is, the board's like, okay, great, 400 bikes, we break even. That doesn't work. Breaking even isn't sustainable. We need to make $100,000 in profit this month. I want you to have a think about how, and write down for me if you can. So this is called target profit in units. How is my calculation going to change? How am I going to figure out how many units? Don't say it out loud. Okay, go ahead. I want you to write a new calculation. It's going to look very similar to this. Just have a little think about it. It doesn't just, you don't want just the number of bikes to cover your fixed cost, do you? You also want to cover what? Your target profit.
Is the 200 cost for each bike staying the same?
Yes, ma'am. What do I divide by? What's going to cover my fixed cost plus my target profit? My contribution margin for one bike. And because we're assuming sales remains constant, or sales price remains constant, cost behavior remains constant, nothing shifts with that $200, does it? So in this example, How many bikes do I have to sell? 900. My monthly average has been 530. What would you tell me about my target? Well, with everything behaving as it does now, it's unrealistic. But what if I said, I want to increase the commission that I pay on these by $1.10 each? $1.10, that's not going to do anything. By $50 each. What do I think that's going to do for my sales force? Incentive. What's it going to do to my contribution margin per unit? Why? Why is it going to lower my CM per unit? Thank you. That's exactly correct. If my strategy is to increase my sales by upping my commission, what kind of cost is that? It's a variable cost. What's going to happen to my CM? Can you work this now? How many bikes am I going to have to sell if I increase commissions $50 a pop and want to make $100,000? But just have a think about what changes. Does my sales price change? No. Does my variable cost change?
Yes.
Which variable cost changes? Variable selling costs go up $50 a unit. Does my contribution margin per unit change? Sure. Do my fixed costs change? No. This doesn't change. My board still wants to see what this looks like. See if you can tell me how many bikes I got to sell now. Good. Give everybody a chance. I want you to write the formula out for me. How much was I selling them for?
200.
Or 500.
How much are bikes?
500.
Yeah, selling price is 500.
I don't remember. 500 minus 300 was my old number. Based on the information I just gave you, I'm going to give my salespeople another $50 for each bike. What does that do? It drops the amount that each bike sold can contribute to covering fixed costs and profits. So now, that's the same 80 grand plus 100 grand, but my CM's 150 each. The question is, does that $50 a unit incent my salespeople to pop up my sales that much? And is there a market for it? Is that realistic? What if I told you my strategy to increase sales is to spend $4,300 on an advertising campaign? It's going to cost me $4,300 a month to buy a combination social media and print presence in the market that I want to saturate. How many bikes do I have to sell? Don't say it out loud. I'm committing to $4,300 a month for a combination social media and print exposure. Forget the commission. We're not increasing the commission now.
So that's staying at 150 an hour.
I'm not doing anything with the commission. Now I'm just trying different strategies. Strategy number 1, increase commission $50 a pop. Strategy number 2, which is separate, exclusive from strategy number 1, I'm going to commit to $4,300 a month in advertising expenses. And my target profit remains the same. How am I going to make $100,000 $4,300 a month in advertising expense. I have to calculate it myself. I sure don't know off the top of my head.
That's right. Yeah,
Per unit.
Okay. What time about the goal? So it's like 900.
Strategy number 2. What happens to my contribution margin in strategy number 2? I think it stays the same because I'm not impacting selling price or variable costs. What happens to my fixed costs? They go up by $4,300. How much do I want to make? How much is my CM per unit? How many bikes do I have to sell? How much? 922. Well, now all of a sudden I can start to analyze strategic choices, can't I? Which makes more sense, obviously. Now, there's a lot of variables in there. Is the advertising campaign going to work?
Generate more sales.
Is it going to translate to additional sales? Or really, probably more realistically, you're going to have to give it a 2, 3, 6 month time period to work. It also depends upon what time of year it is and where you live. Right now, obviously, if you own a bike shop, you are not going into a season where you're increasing sales. Okay, do you see the value of this? And I can do these what ifs all day long. What if I drop the price $11 a bike? Strategy 3, let's see. How many bikes do I need to sell? What am I selling them for again? 500 each? So let's say I'm going to drop my price 10%. You figure out the selling price. And do all the math on this. Strategy number 3, drop the sales price 10%. Nothing else changes. And again, we're back to the first example, right, with the PowerPoint. I think they were $300 a bike, weren't they? So what's my new selling price? Right, I was selling them for $500, and I said, well, strategy number 3 is drop the selling price by $50. Try and undercut the competition. So what are my bikes selling for now?
$450.
What are my variable costs? Same. Oh my goodness, this looks exactly like what? The answer is exactly like strategy number 1, which totally makes sense. Aha, look at that. Anything that affects variable costs, sorry, let me finish this. So 80 grand plus 100 grand divided by 150, how many bikes do I have to sell?
900.
Isn't it 12? Can somebody synthesize for me what we just learned? Strategy 1 and 3 yielded the same results. Is that just happenstance?
Feels like you're taking back to the big.
Neither strategy 1 nor 3 affected fixed. Exactly. Now, let's look at this. That's precisely what happened. In number 1, what happened to my contribution margin?
Went down.
It dropped. Why? Because
Variable selling expense went up.
my variable selling expenses went up. What happened to my CM? It went down. Strategy number 2, what did that do to my CM? Nothing. I played with fixed costs. Strategy number 3, what happened?
Variable cost went, sales price went down.
Strategy number 3, my sales price went down,
So your contribution margin.
so my contribution margin went down. And I'll tell you, I'll set this formula up over and over, and even having been in accounting for 30 years of my life, I still do the little arrows. Because every time I try and muscle out a multi-layered model in my head with this goes up and that goes down and blah, 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 somewhere around along the line I'm going to get them backwards. But if I can write them down and look at them, I'm pretty guaranteed to get it. If a cost goes up, CM goes down. Sales price goes down, CM goes down. Okay. And we're going to have an opportunity to work through a lot of these numbers. So that's great. The board has 3 strategies in front of them, and they can start making some assessments. Honestly, it's probably going to require relooking at that $100,000 target profit. Or maybe not. Maybe they're coming out with a new model by whatever. Okay, you need more information. These give you, this calculation we were just working on, gives you number of units you need to sell. Okay. We also calculate break even in dollars of sales. So those were all break even in units, target profit in units. Now we're going to look at break even in dollars of sales and target profit in dollars of sales. Same, what do I have to cover that goes up in the numerator always? Fixed costs. But instead of dividing by contribution margin in dollars, I'm going to divide by something called contribution margin percentage. And help me out here. I'm going to use my same calculation. I'm selling my bikes for $500. My variable costs are $300. Therefore, what do you think my contribution margin percentage is? How am I going to calculate my CM percentage?
Take your contribution margin, divide by the selling price.
Absolutely. What percentage of my selling price is my contribution margin? And I can just tell you all these calculations that I put up. I mean, you can memorize them, and that's fine. But what the best approach is, oh, I understand. For each unit I sell, what percentage of my selling price goes to cover fixed costs? 40% of my selling price goes to cover fixed costs. Tell me now, please, what my break even is in dollars from this problem. I've been putting up tomatoes for 3 weeks, but I never get tired of them. So did my fixed costs change in this example? No. What dollar volume of sales do I have to make? Please figure out what dollar volume of sales I have to make for strategy 1, 2, and 3. Based on all the, okay, wait, first off, does anybody have a question about this?
Is that how much you have to cost or sell?
That's my gross sales dollars to break even. Now, I want to make $100,000 profit. And I gave you 3 strategies. And then I'm just going to give you a couple seconds, or minutes actually. Strategy number 1, sales price stays constant. I pay my folks $50 more per bike. What dollar volume of sales do I have to make? Strategy number 2, and it should be the same data you have in your notes from this last go round. Strategy number 2, I engage in a $4,300 a month advertising campaign. What dollar volume of sales do I have to make? And then let me mix it up just a little bit for number 3 so you have a new set of numbers. I'm going to decrease the selling price 8%. And then strategy number 3, I'm going to decrease the selling price 8%. What dollar volume of sales do I need to make to earn $100,000? Give you a couple minutes. I'm going to run down and get those other exams from that. Yes.
I was sick yesterday.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Okay, so in strategy number 1, what is my percentage, my CM percentage?
30.
30%, right? 150 divided by 500. So 80,000 plus 100 grand divided by 30. What's my dollar volume of sales? 600 grand. Yep. Strategy number 2. What's my contribution? Are you okay with that? Okay. what didn't you get, the 0.3?
No, I got my answer, 206,000.
That's what I got. Because I forgot to
Okay,
add.
180 divided by 0.3, I think is 6.
Yep, it is.
I forgot to add the 100,000 in.
Yeah, 600. 80 plus 100 divided by 0.3.
Oh, yeah. No, we'll probably be at 80.
Because we're doing the target profit now, the 3 strategies.
Oh, fixed cost becomes target.
So break even and target profit, honestly, basically, I mean, not the same thing, but you have to think about it the same way. The numerator is everything that your contribution margin has to cover. In break even, it just has to cover the fixed cost because you're essentially saying your target profit is 0, aren't you? Then anything above break even, also my contribution margin has to cover, so that has to go in the numerator. Example number 2, what's my percentage? 200 divided by 500, it's 40%. What dollar volume of sales? How much? 460700? 750. Thank you. Does that make sense to you? Contribution margin is powerful. I just took another 10% of the sales price of each product, each bike, to cover my fixed cost plus target profit, and my fixed cost only went up $4,300. Strategy number 3, I think I said my sales price did what?
Decreased by 80%.
Decreased by 8% this time. So it went down $40, right?
Yep.
What's my CM percentage? 160 divided by 460 equals what? How much? Okay, give me out to 2 decimal places.
0.35.
00? I don't think so.
43,470.
That's it.
That'd be 4.78.
What dollar volume do I have to sell? $517,539. Could we do this all day? That's how you brainstorm. And guess what? You're the one sitting at Excel while everybody around you is brainstorming and you're throwing these numbers up. Is this attainable? How are we going to do this? Okay. For Friday, let me just shut this down.